Medal of Honor Allied Assault is a PC game that came out in 2002 with 2 expansions, Spearhead, releasing later in 2002, and Breakthrough in 2003. During this year, I've been a bit more interested in trying to get 100% achievements on games that I own. It got me thinking that Allied Assault doesn't have any achievements or any way to track your progress or your records, so therefore I wonder what achievements Allied Assault would have. I'll do a separate video for Spearhead and Breakthrough. Now, when thinking about this, I had to initially think about what different achievements look like. I boiled it down to Standard, Grind and Unique. Standard are ones that you get by simply playing the game. So it would be complete mission 1, complete mission 2, complete the game on a certain difficulty. Even ones like get 10 kills with each type of weapon or get 10 headshots would count here, because statistically you're probably going to get this without trying, and if not, it's easy enough to get. Grind achievements are ones that you'd have to spend a bit of time on and do over and over again. It's about 1,000 kills in a playthrough, so there could be a grinding achievement of getting 10,000 kills. Quite often a lot of multiplayer achievements are grinding achievements, like get 10,000 kills in multiplayer, 1,000 kills with each weapon type, win 100 team deathmatches. In this video I won't go through what I think multiplayer achievements could be, because they'll be similar to what I've already suggested. Unique achievements are the most interesting ones. This is what I'll be mainly focusing on in this video. These achievements could even be about something that players don't even know about, such as an exploit, a bug or a hidden feature, or even ones that I've noticed is possible by doing something a bit unusual. There are some achievements that could look like unique achievements, such as blow up a train by using explosives on a buffer stop, but that one is actually required to complete the level. So let's have a look at what I think the achievements could be. I should say I have put names to some of the achievements just because I could. First of all, it will be the more obvious ones, such as complete mission 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. I'll also say to complete the whole game in at least easy difficulty, medium and hard. In most games, if you complete the game in hard, it will auto-complete the lower difficulty achievements. I'll add in get 10 kills with each weapon type, destroy 25 tanks, kill 1,000 enemies. Before going into the mission specific achievements, I will talk about the achievements that are spread across the whole game. So the first one is destroy all spotlights and their machine gunners. Now, not all spotlights have a machine gunner, but most of them do. In total, there are 22 spotlights spread across the game. Sometimes there's quite a few in one particular level, but I will show you where all of them are. I've already shown the 3 that exist in the rescue mission, mission 1 level 2. Now normally you would have to try and dodge these, but I find it easy enough just to shoot the 3 of them down. We've already seen one that's partway through sabotage the motor pool, and there were 2 more just there in one particular area, and then in the final scene there is this final one here. Now we go all the way to mission 4 level 2, diverting the enemy. So this one is quite tricky to get if you try and get it from this point of view. The enemy's head is just about appearing over the wall. You can get it as you proceed through the mission though. Later on though, there's this one just up here, but this one doesn't have a machine gunner. In the following mission, the command post, there's this one here just before you enter the complex of houses. There's a few in mission 6 level 2, Die Sturmgoer. There's one right at the start here which you can avoid, but probably easier just to shoot. And then these 2 towers here, one of which has 2 machine gunners, you can avoid, they're quite easy to do. But considering it's the end of the level, sometimes it's more fun just to shoot them all down. There's just these 2 to get in the next mission, the communications blackout. They're quite easy enough to get. You do have to deal with all the people down below trying to shoot at you, so lots of different ways to try and get these 2. And now it's time for the Schmerzen Express. There's this area here near the end of the mission that has quite a few spotlights to get rid of. All of these spotlights are in close proximity to each other, so when you shoot one of them, another one will shine its light towards you. So you have to be careful, you have to make sure that you don't accidentally get seen by the next spotlight, but if you give it just a moment or so, the spotlight will go back to its normal routine. This achievement I'm calling the easier battle, and in the whole game there are a whole bunch of MG42s that if you go onto it, you then spawn a whole bunch of enemies. But what I've noticed is that if you skip an MG42, you end up skipping a whole bunch of enemies. It doesn't always work, there are some MG42s where there's always a set number of enemies, but in Battle in the Bocage and the Nebelwerfer Hunt, you certainly notice this a little bit more. So in this section, if you don't go on the MG42 and you just go straight towards the exit, you spawn about 9 enemies, but if you go onto the MG42, you spawn about 15 in total. For the trifecta achievement, you need to kill 3 enemies with 1 rocket round. You could do it at this point in Sniper's Last Stand, but there are a couple of other levels where you get a rocket launcher. The maxed out achievement is where you have to have a weapon in each slot during 3 different levels. So you get this in Nebelwerfer Hunt and the last level storming Fort Schmerzen, but then you have to try and get it in at least one other level. And in Sniper's Last Stand, if one of your allies dies, then you can get the BAR, which is the machine gun slot, allowing you something in each 6 weapon slots. As far as I know, I don't think there are any other levels where you can do something like that. I think it's just those 3. In Barrel of Laughs, you have to destroy every barrel in the missions. I'm talking about these red barrels that you see here. And so there are quite a few in Mission 1 that you can get. This part is Sabotage the Motor Pool, the 3rd level. So there's a few around here that you can get, a couple at the end. In this video I haven't included every single barrel in the game, but I've got clips here just to give you a bit of an idea of some of the barrels that you need to destroy. When you get into the Omaha Beach landings, there's a few barrels in the bunker that you have to go up. And then when you get into Mission 4, there's a few barrels in this particular level diverting the enemy. There are a few more barrels in the final mission as well. For the At the Right Moment achievement, you need to jump onto something that shouldn't be jumped onto. What I mean here is I'm pressing W to move forward and jump, and I can't get up onto this metal bit. However, if you just press jump and then W, you can jump over the top of it. And that was particularly used in this part here in the multiplayer map Destroyed Village as a way to get into this area that you weren't supposed to be in. This one, it takes 2 to tango. You need to dodge an enemy's rifle fire for 22 seconds without taking damage. So I started to do this a little bit as a way to reload some of my weapons, because it was easy enough just to spend a bit of time making sure I've got everything sorted before I get to the next area. I then realised that as I was playing about with this, that this particular part was just over 22 seconds, so I thought it kind of fitted with the achievement. For Bullseye, you need to take down a spotlight and machine gunner with a grenade. Fairly easy to do, just chuck one up there and hopefully you get both of them. For 2 birds 1 stone, you need to kill 2 enemies with 1 shotgun blast. I did this one accidentally and thought that it would be quite good to add. Now we get on to the ones that people will be very familiar with. This is Medal Collector, where you have to collect all the medals in the game. For Mission 1 you have to rescue the POW in the fort, and you have to ensure that he survives the rest of the level. In Mission 2, when you're aboard the submarine, at one end there is a document that you can take. Mission 3 technically doesn't have one, you just need to complete the level. In Mission 4, the command post, if you collect some explosives in one of the manor houses, you can then blow up the 2 King Tiger tanks that are outside. It is best to do this as you complete the level, because the alarm doesn't stop and soldiers keep coming at you. In mission 5 you have to make the 3 tank crew survive the level, and as you can see here I have got 8 surviving members. I'll show you that later. At the beginning of mission 6 you have to ensure that 5 or more allies survive the initial battle. I thought it was 8 previously, but no, it's 5, and it's just a case of sniping down everybody as quickly as you can. Now we get on to the more mission specific ones. So this is saving Private Allen, and you have to ensure that he can get into the fort. So the best way to do this is to shoot down the 2 rocket launchers and also anybody that drops down here as well, and that way Allen can get into the fort. I didn't actually check how far he could make it, and it was only around this point that he did die, but I wonder if he really could actually make it to the very end of the level. For the homegrown weapons only achievement you need to pick up the Thompson in this level. So the MP40 is just there, and normally you would pick it up, but if you don't pick it up, then when your teammates die at the end, you can pick up their Thompson. The cleaning the table achievement is where you have to disturb the card game with grenades. Ideally, I was trying to kill all 3 enemies with 1 grenade, but because they move about, it was a bit tricky to do, so I found just sending in 2 seemed to work. When entering the fort later on, you could go your own way and you could ignore the Major's advice, shoot down the 3 machine gunners and spotlights, and that just allows you to be able to walk into the fort without anybody watching you. Entering Narnia is where you have to get the secret door to open, and this was something that I couldn't figure out for ages, but I seem to remember doing when I played the game ages ago. But there is a door up here that only opens if you shoot at the people on the truck. Normally I wouldn't have done that because I was trying to get into the fort without any problems, but then I posted a video on it ages ago and someone suggested that this is what you have to do. Unfortunately, the Major died. For the Major Pain achievement, you need to complete the fort area so quickly that you're waiting for Major Grillo for over a minute. As you get used to playing this game, you know where you need to go, you know what health packs and ammo to pick up, but you have to wait here because if you move on to the next area, then the Major will die because you're too far away. The sneaky way in is by killing these 2 enemies at the end from the other side of this particular area. I've usually always gone in the front, but you can get these enemies a bit more easily by going this way in. In the next level, Sabotage the Motor Pool, the achievement I'm waiting for you is to kill the engineer as soon as he gets out of the tank. In No Signs of Entry, you need to destroy the signs from the Jeep's mounted machine gun. There may be more signs in the level, but there's the 2 at the start, and then there's another one later on just as you enter the airfield. Also near the start, No Hold-Ups is where you destroy this barricade without having to make the Major wait. So even if you destroy it before he gets there, he will stop briefly but then immediately starts if you've done it correctly. In the airfield there are 2 trucks containing enemies, and so the trucking along achievement is where you have to kill the enemies but don't destroy the trucks. The first truck will continue to follow you to this little area. It won't interfere with you anymore after this. There is another truck that appears on the airfield itself, and it will follow you for quite a bit of time. In No Hold-Ups Part 2, you have to destroy everything in the tank area as quickly as possible, and by this I mean destroying all the barrels and the tanks, essentially before you even get into that particular area. You will briefly pause as you can get rid of some of these enemies, but then the Major will start off again as quickly as possible. In the next part, Surprise Grenade is where you kill the 2 lift enemies with grenades as soon as they appear. During a test of recording some of these, I did manage to get the 2 enemies as they were still in the lift, but unfortunately I wasn't recording at the time. Also in this area, what are these for? Collect the MG rounds. Unless I've completely missed it, I don't think you get a machine gun in this level. The achievement Stinky is close the toilet door. Normally you just kill the enemy, but you know, he might have made a smell, so close the door. As you go down the lift, Death from above is where you eliminate the ground floor enemies from the floor above. So you start off having to get these 3, but then the enemies on the ground floor are all visible from the floor above. For some of them you might have to just move around a bit to see them, but it makes a good vantage point and you can easily get rid of all of them without losing any health. After the truck garage, my rifle will do is where you have to snipe the lighthouse enemies from over 100 meters away. Now I don't actually know if this is 100 meters, but I just put that in as a way to demonstrate that you need to kill the enemies from being essentially as far away as you can be. It can take a bit of time, and you'll see me get my binoculars out because it's an easy way just to try and focus on an enemy and make sure you've got the right angle and that you're pixel perfect. At the bottom of the lighthouse, secret health is where you collect the health pack that is behind these boxes. I don't think I knew about this health pack straight away. I think it was only after a few more playthroughs that I realised it was there. The final achievement of mission 1 is That Dizzy Feeling, where you have to activate the light in the lighthouse and then descend to the exit in 20 seconds. I did several attempts of trying to do this as quickly as I could, and it seemed to be that it's about 18 or 19 seconds that I think is the fastest that you can do. At the very start of mission 2, I'm right here is where you have to be under the guardhouse and looking at Major Grillo through the scope the moment he tells you to. So from the start of the mission, Major Grillo will start talking to you, and the idea being that you're meant to wait until he finishes what he says and then you can take out the guards. However, if you're efficient, you can get right up to him as he tells you to look through the scope at him. The next achievement, Pistol Connoisseur, is where you have to defeat all enemies in this first section as you enter through the gate, but with the silenced pistol. So the idea is that you use the sniper rifle that you get to take out all of the enemies, but just for the challenge, I'm going to say that you have to get all of these enemies with the silenced pistol. There are these huts that you can hide behind, and then hopefully an enemy will get a bit closer to you. But you have to be careful that the dogs aren't making their way up to you, or that an enemy is sniping at you without you realising. What happens with the silenced pistol is if you keep shooting it in quick succession, then there's more spray to where the bullets will go. So what you have to do is you have to wait a moment to let that spray decrease, and then you can get the enemy from further away. The crosshairs themselves don't expand. I think in other games like Call of Duty, they do expand to kind of demonstrate the spray of where the bullets might go. It was at this point that I also happened to kill 2 enemies with 1 bullet, and they had exactly the same animation. When you're in the main building here, No Time to Read is where you have to collect the documents in under 45 seconds. I'm going to say that the timer starts when you step onto this floor after stepping off the stairs, and you have to get back to the stairs in under those 45 seconds. I did try to find the best way of doing this, and I think if you go through this back door here, it's a bit easier to get into this room, grab those documents, and then you have a bit of a better line of sight on these 2 beside the big oil tank, motor, whatever it is. And then I found it was best to go back out the back door, because then you can get the enemies a bit more easily, as some of them might be right by the door by the time you step out. Most of these enemies have MP40s, so you just have to be a bit careful there. Immediately, the next section, there's Sniper Connoisseur. You have to defeat all the enemies in this ground floor section with the sniper rifle, but without using the scope. These enemies here are in close quarters, so not really ideal for the sniper rifle, but that's what makes this achievement a fun one to get. In Secret Documents of the Kriegsmarine, the first achievement is Downtime, where you have to watch the 2 German soldiers dance. So what you do is you go to this window here, and you press E to use, and the Germans will do some dancing. They might do handstands, they might do what looks like the can-can. There's a fair few achievements to do in this particular level. This achievement is how I play the game, where I always like to kill 2 scientists with 1 bullet, 1 scientist with 1 bullet, and then whack the prototype. This one No witnesses. Kill all enemies in the first area using only the pistol and by not setting off any alarms. I've always enjoyed playing it like this as well. What I've also done here is I've killed the 2 enemies down below. Surprisingly, they didn't set off the alarm or didn't alert anyone else to set off the alarm. It's not hugely difficult to get this because a lot of the enemies are in their own area, but still you just have to be a bit quick and careful about this one. Then for part 2 of No Witnesses, so it's to kill everyone in this section of the level. This part is a bit harder to do without setting off the alarm, so I'll just say you just have to kill everyone. When doing this, you have to kill all the engineers that are working on the submarine, and there's 2 different submarines where you'll find some engineers working on. There's one engineer that's towards the back, so you have to work your way around to find that engineer. For the achievement Run Power Run, don't stop running. So you have to complete the whole of this part of the mission, and you just have to keep running. You can't stop, you can't pause. If a door stops you from running any further, that's fine, but you have to quickly show your papers, you have to kill enemies on the run. It was a little bit tricky in this scientist section because there's not much room to run up and aim properly at the scientist, so they did take a bit of time. I probably didn't do this in the best way possible, but this is just to show you an idea of what the achievement would be. You do have to run around in circles to use up a bit of time to wait till the officer comes into the room where you can get the level 2 papers, but from there it's pretty plain sailing, just a case of getting to the submarine. For the sneakiest sneaker, you have to get into the level 2 section without the level 2 papers. So it is actually possible to do this. You just crouch and go along the far wall and you can get in without any problems. You can't get onto the submarine though, so it's just this little bit. Here we have double kill, where you kill 2 enemies with 1 sniper bullet. Quite easy to do, but you just have to make sure they're one in front of the other. In the final level of this mission, Just Venting is where you kill 5 enemies from the vents. So there's 1 just there. You'll then see in the next section 2 enemies, one of which is running away. I have tried many times to kill the one that's running away, but I think he's the one that ends up in the vent at the very end. I found it easier to kill the officer first and then the other one by shooting him in the foot. If you shoot the one on the left first, then the officer runs away, so it's best to do it officer first. And finally, the guy that jumps up into the vent. There's a couple in this section that I thought of. One of them is I want to get out of here, and that's to get from that door that leads outside to the train in under 25 seconds. In theory, it's probably doable in under 20 seconds if you go directly. However, because you'll go past a lot of enemies, you will lose quite a bit of health. So I thought maybe just saying 25 seconds will be good enough. And if anyone has noticed, one of the soldiers here says, "I think I've wet myself." The other achievement for this area is I don't want to get out of here, and it's where you kill all enemies in the section and escape on the train with less than 5 seconds to go. There's the text in the top left that says you have 110 seconds to go, and when it gets down to 60, a stopwatch will appear. At the end of the whole section, I was expecting there to be huge waves of enemies, but it just gets a bit dead, so you can take your time. There's also quite a few achievements for this particular section, the famous Omaha Beach. In this achievement, the Heroic Soldier, you have to get up the beach without taking any damage. This took me quite a few attempts to do, and it requires a lot of patience and just moving from one obstacle to the next. I'm not playing the whole thing here because it will take a very long time to show all of this. I did take 1 bullet just as I got to the very edge of the beach, so depends on where the achievement triggers. You could say maybe I did get it, maybe I didn't, but it did take me a number of attempts to even get this particular recording. This achievement, the story-driven narrative, is a little bit different. You have to trigger all the voice lines. It was only after playing this a few times that I then activated voice lines that I hadn't heard before. I'm assuming in this recording I have activated them all. I couldn't find any others that were there. And the whole point of these voice lines is to give the story about what happened on Omaha Beach. That you had people who were trying to blow up the obstacles to let the tanks through, but then people presumably were not happy with that because the obstacles provided them shelter. There's various things going on, so yeah, that's this achievement, to hear all of the different voice lines. Now we have another tricky one to do. There goes my ally. Get up the beach in under 45 seconds. I'm going to let this one play without commentary, just for a little bit of a break. The one shot but not one kill achievement is for only getting shot once running up to the bunker. I'm not sure where this shot comes from because it's directly in front of you and the people in the bunker can't see you. You okay there? Is an achievement where you have to visit the floating soldiers. When you're just about done with the mission, if you enable cheats, you can go back and visit this group of 6 or 7 soldiers that just seem to be floating in the air. No idea why. Meeting interruption is where you have to kill 4 enemies with 1 grenade in this section. I don't quite do it here, but I remember doing it before, so I know it's possible. For Dead in Narnia, you have to kill the enemies hiding in the wardrobes before they exit. If you're not quick enough, they will just come out and start shooting you, so it's usually best to get them first. There's a section at the back in Battle in the Bocage, and the heavy metal achievement is to kill all of these enemies using the BAR. You normally would have to use the sniper rifle, or at least it's suggested that you use it, but the BAR is quite a powerful weapon and can do just as good a job. The achievement Agoraphobia is where you only kill the enemies when they're in the house. So you can't look outside and shoot them there. You have to wait until the enemies have run into the house. And they'll either run in through the windows at the very back or the windows near the bottom of the stairs. Sometimes you just can't be bothered with this. And one such example is going straight outside the front of the house. If you go on the machine gun, more enemies will spawn. So sometimes it's easier just to get outside and you have a much smaller number of enemies to deal with. Sometimes you will feel like you're such a pro, and one such example is here, where you have to kill the 2 groups of 4 enemies in quick succession. You have one group here in the barn, the other group is visible from the top of this house. One of them is looking back at you from the silo, but the other 3 don't take any notice of you. After taking the radio that is by the silo, if you then take the offensive, you will reduce the number of enemies that spawn. I'm not sure specifically how this wall blows up because there aren't any enemies nearby, but if you catch them by surprise, then more enemies won't spawn. If you hide around the silo, then a whole bunch more will come through, and it just makes the whole gunfight a bit harder. There is an achievement later where you have to keep all of your allies alive, and doing it this way is definitely an easy way to help with that. I always like to try and find new things to jump on when I play this game. And when I realised you could jump on this gate, I thought, well, I've got to make that into an achievement. This achievement is the first of many. Keep your allies alive. In Battle in the Bocage, you have 3 allies that you need to keep alive, one of which you will fail the mission if he dies, but the other 2 aren't as relevant. Keeping all 3 alive isn't too tricky for the mission. You just have to try and be a bit careful about how quickly you get through to the next section, how many enemies you spawn. The taking the offensive achievement I mentioned earlier is just one way to try and get through this level without your allies dying. It will probably require a lot of saving and reloading, but you can make it to the end of this mission with all 3 of your allies alive. Annoyingly, they don't come with you to the next mission, only one of them. This achievement is one of those where you could make it harder on yourself by going into all the houses, going on all the mounted machine guns and spawning lots of enemies. So for getting downtown, the requirement is that you don't go in the houses to spawn all of those said enemies. It ends up being quite a bit easier, but you don't get to pick up any of the health packs on the outside. However, if you're clever and you hide behind the houses, then you can get a lot of the enemies and a lot of the mounted machine gunners. This is also useful for the Keep Your Allies Alive achievement for this particular level as well. After the town section, you have this moment where you have to blow up a tank. The thing is, you have to let the tank blow up the wall so you can get through it. In this achievement, far too efficient, you have to destroy the tank before it blows up the wall. However, if you do that, you soft lock yourself and there's no way to get through despite the window being very open. This is something that I've never actually done before. I've always gotten the tank down to 20%, let it blow up the wall and then shoot again to destroy it. Same achievement as before, getting further downtown, don't enter the houses while going down the street. If you go into the first house with the mounted machine gun, you will spawn a lot of enemies on the other side. If you go into the houses, you spawn yet even more enemies. You also have to be quite quick about this section in order to keep your allies alive. For the Divine Intervention achievement, you need to not get hurt while going up the graveyard towards the church. Generally speaking, to do this you just have to be as quick as possible and go to the side, and then the machine gunners don't get you. Watching from above is where you have to oversee the pews in the church. Like I've said earlier in the video, there's a lot of parkour that you can do in this game. And so one area where you can do some of the parkour is in the church in the Nebelwerfer Hunt. By jumping in this particular way, you can go on the ledge here and eventually oversee the pews in the church. Here is part 2 of Keep Your Allies Alive. Simply keeping all the allies alive until the end of the level. In this particular level it's not quite as hard to do as some of the others, but still can be a bit of a challenge. This is an achievement that can only be completed with cheats. It's called Farmhouse. And if you enable the cheats and then open the console in the main menu, type in map list, all one word, and then you'll see a list of all the different missions, including one called M4L0. As far as I understand it, this is a mission that was created as part of the demo for the game because it appears in one of the original trailers. It has been given the term farmhouse as the level because you are simply going from farmhouse to farmhouse. And the idea is that you have to rescue your allies from the gunfight and work your way over to the big manor house to collect some secret documents. Following this, you then simply escape the level. So it is completable. In this level, the most annoying things are the dogs that keep respawning from different areas, but they might come from in front of you or behind you, so you just have to keep an eye out. I've had it before where the mission has just ended after the first section, so sometimes I've had to restart and replay, but generally speaking you can get the mission completed. I have had difficulties with the documents that you have to find in the manor house, mainly because the objective marker takes you to the centre of the manor house, and so I suppose you have to search around to find the documents, but it's just a bit different to other objective markers that you come across in the game. Nevertheless, it's still a fun little level to play. It probably takes about 5 minutes to do, and it's interesting to think of what this level could have been. The Pro Gamer achievement is in Mission 4 Level 1. You have to kill everyone in the house with headshots. This mission is a little bit bland, there's not really much that you can do, so I did slightly struggle to think of what achievements you could do, so yeah, this was one that I thought of. The only other achievement I could think of for this level is No Passengers, where you have to kill all of the passengers in the back of the truck before the truck stops and before the driver gets out. In the next level, diverting the enemy, the loud way in is you have to enter the compound without being silent. I'm not necessarily referring to just using the silent pistol, I mean that the enemies know that you're there. The other way of getting into the compound is by being quiet. So for the quiet way in, you have to jump into the back of the truck, and I found this is easier to do when the truck stops and changes colour, weirdly enough. Often if you miss the jump, the truck will just set off again. Slightly later in the level, explore the train gun is where you have to have a look around the train gun, and it appears slightly off the normal mission path that you're supposed to go. I don't know if it's referred to in any particular way, but in some ways you can complete the mission without ever knowing that this was there. I've mentioned this one before, but I Can See You is where you kill the spotlighter before approaching the building. Now from a distance you can just about see the tip of his helmet, and it's hard to get him, but you'll know you'll get him when the spotlight stops moving. This one was just a fun little challenge to do. No Escape is where you stop the 3 enemies from getting out the room. The achievement I Wasn't Even Here is where you only can use the silence pistol in diverting the enemy. This is one of the few whole level challenges that I've got because I found it quite fun to use the silence pistol. There's other levels where you use a particular weapon that can be quite fun to do the whole level in. And it's not too difficult to use a silence pistol. The difficulty you have is that you have to make sure you get good shots and that you pick up the pistol ammo wherever it appears. You can also bash the enemies, that way you don't lose any ammo. In the next mission, the achievement, this is a bit loud isn't it, is where you only use the shotgun to kill enemies in the first area. I'd always thought it was a bit odd that you have to be really quiet and be very subtle, but nope, you're given one of the loudest weapons in the game. You can't even pick up shotgun ammo in the level, let alone the whole game. I don't think you can. I can't even remember what it looks like. So yeah, kill all enemies in this first area with the very loud shotgun. By any means necessary is where you have to destroy the artillery in the first part of this level. You obviously don't have any explosives that you can use. You can get some later in the game, but you can only use it on the tanks. So throw some grenades at any artillery, any trucks, any tanks that you see. Now we're getting into one of the harder achievements to get, Don't Be Alarmed, where you have to not trigger any of the alarms in the command post. This one took me quite a bit of time to do and a bit of planning. You have to think about which enemies to get, which are the stragglers on the outside of everywhere, which are the ones that are nearer the alarms that you can get. Sometimes it's also a bit of luck, because sometimes the enemies could be so focused on you they won't go to the alarm. This definitely does take quite a bit of skill, and you have to try and get the enemies in one shot, maybe even sometimes 2 enemies in one shot. I would say that this achievement only applies up to the point of either escaping the whole compound or you destroy the 2 tanks. This can take quite a bit of time to do, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm just going to show you the main parts and times when I think I did a good shot. Overall, this was quite a fun achievement to do, and it's one that I remember trying to do when I was younger, trying to complete this level in the most OG way possible. I never managed to do it, and it was one that I'd always thought of that would be quite a good challenge to do in this level. I did also wonder whether you could do it just by hitting people with your weapon, but I think that would probably be a bit tricky to do. In Mission 5, the first achievement is Open Sesame, where you have to open the gate using the bazooka. Then you have the next achievement, Open Other Sesame, where you have to find the other way to open the gate. So here you just press E on the gate and it says find the other way to open the gate, and if you wait about 20 seconds then some enemies will appear from the other side and will open the gate for you. I never knew about this method because I wasn't patient and I kept blasting the gate open with the bazooka. It just goes to show that sometimes if you just sit and wait, then you'll see something a bit different. In Sniper's Last Stand, boom, headshot is where you have to get 10 sniper kills using headshots. And these are very specifically the snipers that wear the black outfits, and you have to get a headshot on them. If you get a torso shot, that doesn't kill them straight away, and you can't get a torso shot followed by a headshot. It has to be that your only shot on them is a headshot that kills them. Making a grand entrance is where you have to enter the city hall from the front. This might seem quite simple, but the main reason I included this particular achievement is because this was something that I only did in the last year. Whenever I'd played through this level, I knew there were some snipers around the front, and so to avoid them, I would go in the side entrance. It was also a little bit easier to manage because I knew where the enemies were, especially as sometimes the snipers are a bit tricky to see. And then making a side entrance is just where you have to enter the city hall from the side. You will always get one of these achievements, but I put in both of them because then you've explored all possible routes into the city hall. Now for what I believe to be the hardest achievement in the whole of the game, or at least from what I've created. Keep Your Allies Alive, Part 3. And this is where you have to keep all 8 allies, yes that's right, 8 of them, alive across the 2 levels up until the very end of the second level. In the very beginning, you come across 5 allies in total, 3 of which are right at the very start, and 2 of them appear just a little bit later in the level. These allies tend to die quite easily. You have to be a bit careful about trying to keep them alive. You have to know where the enemies are. I think one sniper shot can easily take them out. So this did take a lot of safe scumming. I had to find out where the sniper was exactly, and then I could turn around the corner and get them before they could get me or any of the allies. Once you know where all the snipers and all the other enemies are, it then becomes a bit easier to do. It's not as difficult as it could be. If it was a close combat situation, that's where it really would be difficult. Now the allies do follow you around, so you do have a bit of freedom. You can choose which areas to go to, but even if they're near where an enemy is looking, you really have to get that enemy first. I think in the past I managed to get 1, maybe 2 allies through, but that was without really trying. It was only when I went to record this video that I thought I'd try it out, but I didn't think it was possible. I thought, oh, they will just die so easily. But then when I managed to have some of them stay alive, I realised that it probably wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. You do have to keep going back and checking whether the allies are alive though. There's also a little bit more dialogue in the first part of the level where the group of 3 meet the group of 2. I don't know if I had encountered that before, but it was quite something to see, especially when you've played this game for over 20 years and then you suddenly discover something new. One of the odd things though is that at the end of the first level, all of the allies will run around as if they're a bit agitated and they're still trying to find things. I wonder if that was part of their coding so that they were more likely to run into the line of fire of an enemy rather than trying to be a bit more protective and stay behind corners. One thing that I didn't check was whether the medic gives health to the 5 allies that you rescue at the start. He gives health to the other 2 tank crew, he gives health to you, and he also heals himself, but yeah, I don't know if he does it to the 5 from the start. Overall, this was quite a fun challenge to do. It was fun in places, maybe not in others where allies kept dying, and it was certainly tricky to make sure that all the allies came through at the start. After finishing that grueling achievement, there is Bazooka Medic. In this one you have to complete Sniper's Last Stand with the 3 tank crew alive, but in hard mode, and this will automatically activate the Bazooka Medic bonus level. In this level, you play a game of hide and seek with the medic who has a bazooka and is trying to find you. You have 60 seconds to find a hiding spot, and then it's about 4.5 minutes for the bazooka medic to try and find you. Throughout those 4.5 minutes, you can't move, and the bazooka medic will try and find your trail, try and follow it, and so usually you will die, the bazooka medic will find you, but there are a few different spots where it's a bit tricky for the bazooka medic to get to you. So I'm hiding in one of them. I believe there's a couple of others. There's one where you have to hide behind a bed, and so the bazooka medic will shoot at you, but I think kills himself, so it doesn't count. For this achievement, you have to successfully complete this level. There could be more achievements that I think of for that level, but it's best to move on to the next one. And so Tank Expert is where you have to take no damage while in the tank. In theory, I could have done that for the previous level, just don't take any damage from snipers, but I think that would be ultra hard mode. However, as I was playing through this level in the tank, I realised actually I made it fairly far without even taking any damage. So I thought maybe that could be the achievement. A lot of the time you can just wait really far away and destroy something before it triggers, before it shoots you. It gets harder when you have tanks that are coming towards you, especially when there's 2 tanks at a time. So you have to kind of figure out what's the best way to manage this. Do you destroy one tank? Do you try and hide behind that tank to get the other tank? And sometimes what happens is if you shoot the tank, it sort of disables it. The turret doesn't spin anymore, it doesn't shoot at you, but it does still move sometimes. So even if you just get a shot on each tank, that will be enough to stop you from taking any damage from any rocket rounds. You do have to be careful that there aren't any soldiers carrying Panzerschrecks, because certainly in the start of the first level, that was where I really struggled. There were a lot of Panzerschrecks just appearing out of nowhere, so I had to make sure that I got them before they got me. Another achievement to do in the tank mission: flat as a pancake, run over 10 enemies with the tank. This is pretty simple, just find an enemy and run over them. The enemy's running speed is just a little bit slower than the tank, so you can catch up to them, but I found it was easier to get enemies that have come out of an enemy tank. The next achievement, the bridge awaits you, is you have to get to the sniping position in under 90 seconds. I won't play the whole clip here, but it did take me about 80 to 85 seconds when I did it. And I reckon it's possible to do it in even about 60 seconds if you just run all the way there. Problem is, there's quite a few enemies that you would have to either somehow dodge or quickly get past without taking too much damage. Now once you're at the sniping position, the saviour of the bridge is where you kill each enemy that is going to the detonator in one shot. You have to try and get them on the torso or the head while they're moving. You can get them while they're at the detonator, but it's a little bit of a risk, because if you miss a shot while they're at the detonator, then they blow up the bridge before you can even shoot again. Now this one is a bit tricky. Protector of the tank. Keep the tank above 50 health. When I've done this mission in the past, I have been able to keep the tank above 50 health, but I couldn't quite do it this time. You have to be quick with the binoculars in directing the planes where to drop their bombs, and there is a bit of a luck element, as sometimes the planes take a little while to destroy a tank. Into mission 6. Feeling lonely? Find the snipers on the edge of the map and take their ammo. If you know where you're going on this level, you know to run slightly through the forest and you can get to the artillery guns that you need to destroy. In doing so, you ignore the 2 snipers that are on the edge of the map, and while it's easy enough to kill them, you have to do a little bit of jumping to try and take their ammo. Triple dual shot. Kill 3 duos of enemies at machine gun nests in one shot. You can either use your Springfield sniper or you can use your silenced pistol. However, using the silenced pistol means you probably have to get a bit closer or go from behind, and that might be a bit tricky, so the sniper tends to work best here. The silent destroyer is where you have to take out the artillery in the area while using only the silenced pistol on nearby enemies. Obviously having the Springfield sniper and the Thompson makes it a bit easier to get these enemies and certainly getting them from a distance, but just for that extra challenge you have to use only the silenced pistol. At the very start of the second level, Who Shot First is where you have to kill the sniper before he sees you. You have to be quick here and you have to have some experience to know exactly where the sniper is. Later on, Bunker Efficiency is where you kill the enemies in the 2 bunkers without wasting bullets. I'm referring to the 2 that you can't get into, where they have about 4 enemies each and one of them is on a machine gun. You have to kill them all in one shot, and it can be whichever weapon you choose, but typically the Thompson probably wouldn't work here. In the second level of the first mission, Speedy Pow, is where from destroying the artillery you have to then finish the level in under 60 seconds. I was able to do this in about 55 seconds. I'm going to say with this achievement that you can't get rid of any enemies that might be in the way of your path, so you have to start running from the moment you place the explosives and take certain paths to avoid enemies. Knowing who kills you is where you show your papers to these 2 enemies and then you shoot them. Now this is one that I did without meaning to. It wasn't me. Shoot an enemy in sight of other enemies, but don't raise the alarm. So those 2 enemies are looking at me, there's a dead body on the floor, but nope, wasn't me. This was one of my favourite achievements to do, an empty shell of a facility. This is where you have to kill all the enemies in the first area without raising the alarm. Sometimes it's easy enough just to run to the next place and just try and shoot the enemies before they get to the alarm. Sometimes you have to be a little bit careful. Another achievement here, I really want that gun. Get to the STG-44 without raising the alarm in under 75 seconds. So you do have to get the level 2 papers and you will have to shoot the officer. I think it's quite tricky to get the papers without shooting the officer. Otherwise it's just a case of running as fast as you can to get to the room just outside where the new gun is. A little bit later, Make Haste is where you finish the level in under 2 minutes after exploding the room with the STG-44. The alarm will go on and you can turn it off and not spawn any more people. So once you've done that little bit, you can essentially just run straight to the very end. You can even go in the spotlights in the outdoor section. Now this achievement is also a bit of a tricky one, STG-44 Rampage. You have to kill 100 enemies with the STG-44. I suppose it's a bit like the rampages you have in Grand Theft Auto, and I did try to think if there were any other moments in the game where you have a lot of enemies coming at you and you might have a particular weapon. The only other main one I can think of was the command post mission 4 level 3, where you have to get those shotgun kills, but I've done that one already. I suppose you could have others like the command post again, but with the silenced pistol, other weapons, whatever it may be, and they're always quite fun to do. With this particular achievement, you get your 500 ammo plus the 30 that's already in the magazine at the start of the level, but then when you destroy all of that ammo, you can't pick up any more. There is a room near the machine gun in the facility where you can pick up some more ammo, but otherwise you have to be a bit careful with the ammo that you shoot, trying to make sure that you use no more than a few bullets per enemy. Considering you have 100 enemies to kill and about 500 bullets to use, that's about 5 bullets per enemy, so you have to be careful that you get the right shot, that you try and go for headshots or torsos. When I was recording this, I was counting in my head how many enemies I had killed, and when I got to the end of the level I was on around 90, 95, so I knew I had to kind of wait for some more enemies. And I thought it got to over 100, like maybe 105 enemies. When recording this, turned out I had miscounted and I thought I was over 100 enemies by the end of the level. Turned out I was on exactly 100. It's also probably best to try and work your way towards the end of the level rather than waiting too long earlier on. In Musical Prodigy, play the piano. In the communications blackout, we have Ghost Town. Clear the town of enemies without raising the alarm and before destroying the communications centre. This one isn't hugely difficult, it just requires a bit of careful planning, making sure you only take out enemies in a certain area and that any enemies that are running towards an alarm you get before they get the alarm. It then becomes tricky when you're trying to deal with the enemies at the communications centre. Main reason being because there's quite a few enemies around and there's a few different alarms. So you just have to make sure you get the enemies before they get to those alarms. When I did record this, it was a bit tricky to try and get the communications centre to not raise the alarm. I did manage to do it for a fair bit, but then the alarm did raise, so technically I haven't done this, but I am assuming it's possible. Boom, then run is where you escape the level in 35 seconds after destroying the communications centre. I'd say it's generally best to kill all of the enemies first because then there's fewer enemies to deal with. Also switch between the weapons as well or reload when you can clearly see there's no one around. Also throw a grenade down those steps because I think some enemies come up. I reckon with enough practice and expertise you could do it in under 30 seconds. I think I technically did it in 32, so 35 would be running as fast as you can, but under 30 maybe? Catching the train, well quite literally, get run over. Weirdly enough, you end up in the void. So I had to no-clip my way out of here because there was a wall stopping me from getting any further. Just up from the train, Dodge Like a Pro is where you speedrun the spotlight section in under 25 seconds. When I did this, I did it in exactly 25 seconds, so I suppose you could, with a bit of practice, like the section in the communications blackout, you could get it under 25 seconds comfortably. So I'll say 25 seconds here, so it's at least a bit of a challenge. You also have to make sure the spotlights don't see you. Immediately straight away, grenades only is where you kill all human enemies in this room, and you must kill the enemies while they're in the room and also destroy the fuse box. You must also be outside the room at all times. The dog will come out to get you, so that's a separate matter, you can just shoot the dog. But everything else has to be from outside with grenades only and you have to stop them from coming out. Also straight away, I must send the message is where you have to complete the final building in under 20 seconds. This is from entering the building going up to where you send the message. Once again, like with a couple of the early achievements, it's all about switching weapons, reloading when there's no one around and choosing which enemies that you're just going to skip. And now for the final Keep Your Allies Alive, Part 4. There's 2 allies that you meet in this particular mission. Not right at the start, I'm not too worried about those. It's these 2 here with the detonator. The ones at the start are kind of covered by the medal that you can unlock. These 2 can be with you not for the whole level, they're only there for part of it. And to be honest, this is probably the easiest Keep Your Allies Alive achievement to get. Main reason being it's a corridor section, you can just go ahead of your allies and they can stay behind. Further along, everyone gets a splinter is where you destroy all the boxes in this particular corridor with 1 grenade. This was just one that I happened to get randomly, so I thought I'd add it in. Off the beaten path, doing your duty is where you eliminate the enemies up these ladders. You don't have to go up these ladders. The objective is down one of the other ladders, but this just helps your allies that might be approaching this facility. While wearing the gas mask, die by your own doing is where you let the scientist die by mustard gas. Normally I would have shot him and the other soldiers around there as well, but if you leave him here then he will suffocate due to the mustard gas. Escaping Fort Schmerzen is where you have to escape the fort in under 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Like all of the other similar achievements where you have to speedrun a certain section, I reckon this is probably possible in under 2 minutes. I put in 2 minutes and 30 because there's a lot of enemies around, and yes, as you run past them there's some explosions, so you could probably do it much quicker, but I thought 2 minutes and 30 seconds was probably a good time to aim for. That is immediately followed by Leave No Enemy Behind, where you kill all the enemies in the final section. It's very tempting after the last little bit to just get on the train as soon as you can. However, there is an enemy in the tower, there's enemies on the concrete walls, there's also some enemies through the fence, which is the area that you first started in. I believe those final enemies don't die as you leave, so it's a case of making sure that you have left no enemy behind. I don't believe there's a timer to get onto the train, as I was waiting here for ages just watching the fort blow up. There we have all of the achievements that I have thought of for this game. I'll be doing one for Spearhead and Breakthrough. Obviously them being shorter games means the video won't be quite as long, but thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you getting this far, and I hope to see you in the next videos.